Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into the Volquest podcast. I'm Eric Kane alongside Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, and Austin Price, presented as always by our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions. They've been local and trusted since 1999. If you need roofing, siding, windows, or garage, you can contact Exterior Home Solutions today. A free estimate if you dial the phone number 865-524-5888 or online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Going to talk a lot of recruiting in the back half of the podcast, but a little bit more on Tennessee's win over Kentucky, what's coming up from Mississippi State, the college football playoff picture, all that and more right now. Brent Hubbs, it was a lot of the same. Again, it was wasn't pretty, kind of a slow start offensively. Defense made plays when they had to. Defense was solid overall. Quarterback was good, and that was a good thing to see, but overall, Tennessee gets a win over Kentucky, and winning is the most important thing, and Tennessee continues to do that, 7-1 on the year now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a win and you move on. It's just like I've got a win over Austin Price. It's taken me years, but we don't have a Christmas tree up in November. I mean, what a win. What a big time win. I mean, it took me a while to break him, but I finally broke him from that Christmas tree in November. So I'm feeling good about where I stand right now. Tennessee may not be feeling great about where they are with everything offensively, Austin.
Are you doing a handstand about that, Hubbs?
No, I can't do a handstand. You see me. There's no chance. You think my shoulders could do a handstand? Are you kidding?
I don't know.
Trust me. No, but back to Tennessee. I mean, it's not pretty, but it is a win and it's an advancement. Now you got to go try to grow and fix, and that's been the challenge for Tennessee for the last month.
I think for me, I thought it was good to hear Josh Heupel say on Monday that he did not think it was an overhaul, that he thinks that things are still continuing to progress and there's an uptick there. Again, you have to play complementary football on the offensive side, not just as a team, but on the offensive side. The receiver's got to help the quarterback's got to help the receivers, running back's got to pass pro well, the offensive line's got to hold up. Everybody's got to work together. But, I think, again, I just saw a flicker of like, okay, there's a real chance they kind of flip this thing on here. They still got to do it, but at least to me, they've showed a little something with guys getting open the previous two games, and then with Nico playing as well as he did on Saturday night.
Like, I know it gets annoying because we said that, it's close the last couple of weeks, Rob, but, I kind of echo what Josh Heupel said on Monday about how it's not an overhaul. It's kind of right there because, look, a couple of weeks ago, the offensive tackles were so bad. Well, they're not All-Americans, but they've improved the last couple of weeks. Quarterback was overthrowing receivers. Quarterback was making wrong decisions. He's not perfect, but he just came off his best game, in a Tennessee uniform against a Power 4 team. So you're seeing improvements on that side of the football. The run game, albeit you wish it would start a little earlier, has been solid all season long. You're seeing improvements from week to week on that side of the football. They just got to put it all together. And on Saturday, Rob, they just couldn't finish in the first half, and that really hurt them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by the improvements. I would expect improvements simply because of number 8. I mean, I think anytime you've got a young quarterback, I mean, every rep is, or every game, every film study is an opportunity for some serious growth. And man, I think we didn't see it after that first open day, but I thought, the way he played the second half against Alabama, when Tennessee scored 24 second half points, I thought he really built off that. I thought you could see he really put the open day to good use coming out of that. Had a performance where he should have felt confident. Was able to go back to the practice field and kind of just look at everything without having to get up and get ready for another opponent. I mean, I think it's a natural progression. I mean, I said it a few weeks ago, and I know I'm not the only person, but anybody who's freaking out, and I'll buy all your Nico stock. I'll take it all. I mean, I'm not surprised that he is getting better as the year goes on, and I think that's the biggest, most positive takeaway from Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
I was going to say it doesn't matter like what position you are, especially for a young quarterback. But I mean, you need to be improving as the season goes along. Good teams improve from week to week to week. I mean, if you hit your peak in week 2, what are we doing here? Now you want to play better offensively now than where you are, but that's kind of where what they've been doing, what they've been building towards, and you've seen that with the offensive line, you've seen that with the quarterback. Receivers got to come along now, kickers got to come along now, and we'll see what happens, Brent.
Yeah, I think the thing with Nico for me, and I don't want to put it all on one play because I think that's unfair. Statistically, you can make it look however you want to make it look. But it's not just that he's completing 70% of his passes since that 26-yard scramble against Alabama. For me, guys, it's the number of improv plays he's made from that moment on. It's the off-platform throws. It's the touchdown to Miles Kitselman in the end zone, which was not how you schemed it up or how you drew it up. It's the fact that he's kind of just gotten back to playing football. And yeah, I think he's gotten better. I think he's seeing things better. I think he's trusted his protection more. I think they've play called to help him some. But to me, the difference with him right now is we're seeing what we thought we would see and what we saw in spring practice, what we heard about in fall camp. And that's his ability to make a play when things break down. And I think he's done a terrific job of that since the second half of the Alabama game. When you look at the touch or the deep throw to Thornton on the run, the Kitselman play I mentioned, the throw
to Thornton on the third down.
Just improv. When it kind of breaks down, he's making plays, and that's what you need him to be able to do, because he's not going to run it like Hendon Hooker, Eric. I mean, that's not his. He can run it some, but he's not that kind of runner. But what he can do is he's really accurate at different arm angles and things like that. He's getting to that now, and you're starting to see that show up. And I think that's a big reason why you've got some excitement about his growth over the last couple of weeks.
Well, and I tell you, I think another thing to be really excited about is that clutch gene. I mean, I think you saw a little bit of it against Alabama, 24 second half points, and against Kentucky, Tennessee's up 21-18, a little over 10 minutes left. They get the ball on their 10-yard line. Boom. Nico goes 5 for 5 on that drive, puts them up 10 points. He converts 2 3rd and 7s along the way that were just, crucial. One of them is the Thornton throw you're talking about, AP, and another one to Brew. And that was just clutch. That's what big time quarterbacks do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The 2 3rd and 7s on the first touchdown drive of the game for Peyton Lewis in the second quarter. He converted a 4th and 5 and just ran. That's just good football play. I felt like Austin, he was better in the pocket. He evaded pressure, obviously. I thought one time the guy from behind him was going to come and chop the ball loose, and he just stepped up right at the last second. Maybe that was coincidence. Maybe he felt it, but it was good. And we're seeing improvements. But the clutchness that Rob pointed out, I couldn't agree more. He's been playing some really good football the last 6 quarters.
Yeah, I'm with Rob from the standpoint of the people that wanted to sell off the Nico stock, that's just selling too soon. He's still a redshirt freshman who not played a ton of quarterback in his life. And so he's getting better by the week. And, the upside is still massive. He's still going to make, mistakes. He's still a young player, but just some of those plays he makes you just go, man, I'm telling you, when he fully gets it, it's going to be something to watch. And so, I think for Tennessee's offense, if he can just continue to bring what he brought on Saturday night, and then everybody else just kind of keep coming along as well, that's why I still believe, Chris Lowe and I talked about this on The Nation Sunday night, and he said, at this point, are they just who they are? And I said, I'm not ready to go there with them yet. I'm not ready to go with it. I know it's 4 straight games where they've basically scored 7 points in the first half total, but I'm still not ready to go there with them because of how he performed the other night.
I think the other thing too is, what are they going to be on offense? Not are they maxed out, but what are they going to be schematically? What is that going to look like? Are they going to stay a 2 tight end team? And how do they evolve from a scheme standpoint? I don't think that probably gets overlooked a little bit with some of the things, Rob, that they've done with Nico the last 6 quarters and the last couple of games. It's the rollout stuff, getting it out of his hands quicker. We're not seeing everything be a 25-yard over the middle route. Yeah, they're taking their shots here or there, but he had some places to get the ball to quickly on Saturday against Kentucky, and I think that only helps your growth as well.
Yeah, I think he's being more patient. I don't know everything that's going on or, what the game plan is. The simplest thing for me, he just looked more confident, just more poised. And I think probably, some of the things you're talking about are probably a reason for it. He had answers. He knew where those answers were, against certain looks. He was decisive with his throws. He was confident. And man, I know we beat it to death, but it could have easily been a 400+ yard game with, 3 touchdowns. Easily. I mean, just you're talking about 2 plays.
Defensively, solid again. It gave us some chunk plays. Brent, I know you wrote about this in the 10 things you thought you learned. First downs, I did not think they were good, especially in the first half. But when they had to make some plays, they stepped up and, excuse me, played complimentary football. I mean, Will Brooks' interception, Joshua Joseph's strip sack, that turned into 14 points. A couple of big plays there at the end to kind of end it. Tennessee defense just continues to roll, and this is what the 9th straight game Tennessee's held its opponents to under 20 points, and that's remarkable. When you sit here and think about some of the things that are happening this season, that we get so caught up in the day-to-day, but what the Tennessee defense is doing from a whole, what Dylan Sampson has done in terms of the rushing touchdowns this year, leading the SEC in rushing. I know he gets the football. He's got the football 26, 27, 28, and 26 times the last 4 weeks. It's kind of easy, but it's pretty remarkable what these two areas of Tennessee's team have done so far this year.
Well, I mean, listen, we're sitting here that Tennessee gave up 18 points in the game, and we're talking about it wasn't their best day.
Yeah, sign me up, right?
Okay. I mean, let's. I mean, and again, it wasn't their best day, but that is a credit to where Tim Banks and this defensive staff has gotten that side of the ball through recruiting. And listen, throw the evaluators in there, throw everybody behind the scenes in recruiting into that world as well for creating this roster. And then it's the development of those guys that we're at a point now where you gave up 18, but you didn't play your best football. Anybody would have signed up for that 3 years ago, 2 years ago, right? When it was such a hard, it was just hard for them to get off the field. So it's a standard they've created, an expectation that they've created. I thought they got better as the game went on, Rob. I didn't think they started very well, but they obviously finished the football game well and started, kind of getting back to themselves after just not having a very good start.
Well, Hubbard, kind of what painted the picture for me for what you're talking about, the standard they've set and kind of what we come to expect. I mean, Kentucky rushed for 168 yards, which was the most Tennessee's given up this year. And it felt like they got gashed. I mean, really, I mean, that's, 168 is not great, but I mean, that's not just an absolute disaster at the office. But yeah,
look over at Mississippi State and you'll see disaster.
Yeah. I mean, we're not far removed for Tennessee giving up, 200 plus a game on average for the year. So I thought that was telling for me, like, 168 is not a huge night, but with the way Tennessee has been playing, I mean, it felt that way. It felt like, man, they're just running all over them. And that's not really the case, but that's the standard.
Yeah, and it was the explosive plays because Tennessee has been so elite all year long defensively at not giving up chunk plays. And Kentucky chunked them early. I mean, they hit the 50-yarder on a bad run fit. Then they hit a couple of 25-yard pass plays, 25-plus pass plays. And that was just so out of character from what we've seen from Tennessee's defense that it left you with the impression that it was a tough day at the office. When you rewatched it, they did some good things. They weren't at their best. And if you're Tim Banks, you say thank you, because that makes it very easy to go back to the practice field this week, to ratchet it up and have everybody's attention to be ready to play a different challenge this week. And then obviously we know what's coming down the pike.
And Hubbard, to your point about building a roster and recruiting and development, man, just to show you that the Jimmies and Joes can erase a lot of mistakes. I mean, think about that pass rush, forced fumbles. And I mean, it can go a long way towards erasing mistakes.
And I know you're going to get beat sometimes. That's football. I just continue to be impressed by Tennessee's corners. I think they are so good. And how about I think Grant said in the press box, like, it's got to be a Herculean effort every single time a big play's hit on Jamal McCoy, like catch of the year. I mean, those he just threw it up, and the guy Macklin just went and made 2 catches there. I mean, incredible stuff. So yeah, I like where Tennessee's defense is right now. You look elsewhere, obviously, Tennessee's got Mississippi State this weekend at home, Georgia coming up in 2 weeks in Athens. Austin, you had South Carolina that did you a favor. You had Louisville that did you a favor. I know you can only focus on and control what you can control, which is what you do on Saturdays, but kind of scoreboard watching this time of the year, obviously, South Carolina beating A&M was a big win for Tennessee, and Louisville beating Clemson was a big win for Tennessee, and teams like Tennessee in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Tennessee controls its own destiny. Win this week, win next week, you're going to beat UTEP, and then win on the road to Vanderbilt. And I mean, at minimum, you're 11-1 team that's somehow been kept out of Atlanta, which it probably wouldn't be a bad thing. At best, you're in Atlanta and you're playing for the SEC championship. And so I mean, like, you can control everything you can control. So go out and win. If you were not to win, then yeah, I mean, you're looking, for other teams to lose. Does Notre Dame drop a game to Army at Yankee Stadium or to USC to close out the regular season? Those, Big 12 teams, I think at this point with Clemson losing, you're a big fan of Miami. Go run the table, win the ACC, go run the table, be a one-team league. I think that helps the SEC. Michigan, can they help Tennessee this week playing at Indiana? When I say help Tennessee or anybody like Tennessee. So yeah, I mean, I think your scoreboard watching, certainly what the two teams you mentioned, helped out anybody like Tennessee that already has a loss, and help knock down some of those teams a little bit further down to where it'll be harder for them to climb back out. But long way to go. There's a lot of many twists and turns left in the old playoff bracket, I believe, between now and that first week of December.
Mississippi State, just quickly before we shift gears here to recruiting. Mississippi State, they on a backup quarterback. He's a true freshman. He's not half bad. They can score some points a little bit. They're going to run tempo. They got some receivers that are pretty successful so far this year. But I mean, still 9th, 10th in the SEC in total offense. Defensively, really, really bad. I mean, pretty much last in every single category. They're averaging allowing 200 yards per game on the ground. Again, we thought there was a big opportunity heading into the Kentucky game, heading into the Florida game, and it was decent running games. It just took a little while. Rob, it just feels like a game where Tennessee can go and do what it wants to offensively. It feels like it's you don't want to call it a tune-up game because it's certainly not that. You want to call it like a scrimmage because it's certainly not that. But a chance to go out there and do your thing and try to get some confidence before you go down to Athens, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would think offensively, I mean, Tennessee this should be a big day for Tennessee. You just mentioned, you talked about it, but the numbers are atrocious. I mean, they're 500 yards a game of total offense in SEC play at over 40 points a game. I mean, Arkansas just hit them for 50 plus, this past weekend, but they can score. I mean, I think, Tennessee will have to put points on the board. I mean, Mississippi State scored 31 in Athens, scored 24 against Texas A&M, who's a solid defense. So, that side of the ball, they can move it. I mean, they're not the most electric team, but they can generate some points. But defensively, it should be a really good opportunity to build off what you did in the second half at Alabama and the second half against Kentucky, and maybe against all odds, put together 4 quarters of solid football and offensive football in an SEC game.
You're suggesting no first half turnovers, no turnover on down,
not 7 penalties, not 7 penalties.
Yeah,
in the first half, 2 missed field goals.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, and that's why you're sitting here talking about this offense, and you hope that this is the week that they get it going. Everything about Mississippi's defense says that you should be able to. Tennessee's just got to get out of their own way offensively. I mean, you can't make those mistakes that are so self-inflicted wounds. They're so avoidable. That's what Tennessee's got to figure out a way to do. And if they can do that, I agree with what Austin has said for a couple of weeks. At some point in time, it's going to hit. And when it hits, it's going to be an avalanche. It's going to be one of those deals where it feels like a basketball run because Tennessee will have scored, 4 touchdowns on 4 possessions. And it's going to be one of those, oh, okay, that's what it is. And we'll see if that's, if that happens, this week or not. But whenever it happens, there's going to be a moment where it's all going to kind of go together. And they're going to get on one of those runs, and when they do, it's going to be fun to watch because
they nearly had 500 yards of total offense. What was it, Rob? 250 in the first half. I mean, they moved the football.
Oh, it didn't finish.
254 with 7 points. It's crazy.
It's just crazy. Crazy.
Can't do that against good teams for sure. Tennessee and Mississippi State coming up this Saturday. It'll be another night game, 7 o'clock on ESPN. We'll have all the coverage right here on Volquest.com and the Journal's Quarters. Let's talk Tennessee recruiting here in the back half of the podcast. But first, let's get a word from our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions.
Hey, Sterling, man, come on. We got a roof to replace.
Let's go, baby. It's game
time.
Let's go. Hey, Sterling, you ready to go to the top? Man, I can't believe you guys been doing this for 25 years. Oh, baby.
Now, this is what I call a rooftop party.
We have 25 years experience in roofing and exterior renovations, and we're backed by the best.
Are you ready to get your rooftop party started? Give us a call, 865-524-5888.
That phone number for Exterior Home Solutions is 865-524-5888. You can visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com, local and trusted since 1999. Big recruiting weekend for the University of Tennessee as it hosted some commits and several targets, a few for 2025 and a lot for 2026 as Tennessee took down Kentucky. Had a couple of commits heading into the weekend, and we'll touch on that here in a moment. But first, the headliner of the weekend is Tennessee's looking to add a second running back to the class of 2025. A Southern Cal commit was on campus. AP, how did it go for the Tennessee native?
That's right. DeJuan Morris is one that Tennessee's been trying to get up here for a few months now, and it's been tough sledding. But he reached out to Tennessee a few weeks ago after the Alabama game. It certainly feels like things are trending in the right direction. I know Steve Wilhong put a prediction in for him to flip. It feels like Tennessee's got a ton of momentum there. Felt like they had a ton of momentum going in. I think the weekend only added to that. And so, we'll see what he elects to do. But it certainly sounds like he's going to come back up for an official visit at some point, maybe for UTEP or in early December. But either way, Tennessee feels like they're trending in the right direction for DeJuan Morris.
Hey, Austin, let me ask you. Obviously, Morris is a running back. Tennessee's got Justin Baker, who's committed. Baker had flirted with North Carolina and some other schools. Has that all sort of settled down, you think, at this point? And there's nothing else going on there with him, and it's truly two backs Tennessee's looking for in this class?
Yeah, it certainly doesn't sound like anything's going on there, Brent.
Okay.
It feels like things have kind of quietened doon on that front a little bit. And let's face it, I mean, there's a lot of strong innuendo out there that Mac Brown, could be retiring at the end of the year. I mean, he admitted he basically almost did after the one loss. And so, I think that's going to keep, prospects from, giving a hard look at North Carolina. And so, I think everything should be fine there. But they want to get a second back in this class. DeJuan Morris, body frame wise, game, just the skill set's very similar to Dylan Sampson. And so I think, watching Sampson do his thing is probably not a bad thing for the Vols when it comes to DeJuan.
Let's go from one Southern Cal commit to another. Tennessee's been in this conversation for linebacker Jaden Perlotti for a long time throughout this cycle. Feels like he's kind of jumped back into the mix here in the closing months before signing day.
Yeah, I mean, he was up for the game. I didn't want to make a big deal about it on the message board just because, we'll see where things go. Tennessee, all schools kind of handle their NIL stuff, from a budgetary standpoint. And, it certainly felt like Jaden Harmon kind of took Jaden Perlotti's spot when Perlotti chose to go to USC and Harmon flipped from Alabama to Tennessee. And so I'm not going to say he can't end up here, but I think we'll find out how bad Jaden Perlotti doesn't want to go to USC, over the next few weeks, because it certainly sounds like, Tennessee's a factor, but does Georgia get back into the mix? Probably not, but you never know. Where's Auburn at with Perlotti? We'll see where things go down the stretch here. But, he at least visited for the game last week, and his parents looked like they were having a pretty good time. Jaden, much more reserved.
Sorry, Brandon, cut you off. I mean, how many linebackers can they take here? I know they're holding on like crap for Christian Gass, and a great player they don't want to lose. But you just got to commit a linebacker commit last week.
Yeah.
You have Harmon. I mean, we're talking about Perlotti here. How many can they take?
Well, I mean, Gass has got versatility. I mean, but Gass probably more Leo than he is linebacker, but can play linebacker, right? And so, I'm fascinated to kind of see what they do and how they do it. But you have really, the only person you lose is Peely, and you like your linebackers, T. Lander, and obviously Evan Spillman's going to be a good one. You just got to, get back healthy, and Arion Carter leads that group. So, and Jalen Smith's, played a lot this year. So, and Caleb Perry will be back. I mean, see, that's what I'm saying, which goes back to your point. But, we'll see. Again, I wouldn't pencil or pin him in or anything like that, but it was at least interesting to see that he made it to campus on Saturday.
AP, are you surprised at the amount of, not just with Tennessee, but around the country, at some of the movement, potential movement that we're seeing with the class of 25? Because the notion all summer long is you make your hay and you get to August and your class is built, and then you just kind of hang on to that class and you're starting to work on 26s, 27, or the next two classes, whatever those years are. And maybe it's because there's some coaching changes. Maybe it's just because there's some guys that Tennessee has continued to recruit that they're involved in that makes it feel like there's more, quote, flip watch than we've seen. Or am I overreaching there when you look at this thing in this particular class?
Well, I think a lot of schools are putting a lot of stuff in kids' heads to make them, to make them contemplate flipping or taking visits or have a little uneasiness. And I think a lot of it is that house case, because it's like, well, I mean, no matter what kind of agreement you have with the collective at the school, like, what are they going to do if, the collective goes away and everything's taken inside, or what happens if you have both and you got kids thinking they're going to get paid by the collective and by the school. And I'm sure that in a certain way they will, but like, they're not going to get double dipped, I don't believe. And I don't think schools are, because I mean, the schools got to figure out how to get $20 million, right, out of their stuff, which is all doable for most everybody. But I don't think that they're going to do all that and then go, oh yeah, hey, major donors, we still need you to chunk over, X $1 million, for NIL again. Like, I think that's more meant to give some relief to those donors. So I think there's just a lot of unknown, and so kids are still fielding phone calls, still taking visits, more so than they have the last couple of years, where once you committed, as you pointed out, kids were kind of done because the NIL part kind of kept everybody locked in because most everybody had a deal they felt good about.
So this is not a huge leverage game for. I mean, I'm sure there's some of that going on around.
Oh, there's that leverage everywhere. I mean, there's leverage going on with every school. So yeah, I mean that's yes, I think it's part kind of see what you can get and what you can't get. But it's also just some unknown. Like,
gotcha.
I think schools have done a nice job of creating enough doubt there about everything to where kids are just kind of keeping their options open.
To that point, though, and I asked Matt to reiterate this oftentimes on Trail Tidbits. You got Auburn trying to get Smith. You got Georgia trying to get Gash. You got, for the longest time, Bama trying to get Harmon. Like that's the arena you want to be in, because that means you're recruiting the right caliber guys. I mean, right?
Yeah, it's like I told the guy on the board the other day. Like, you don't need to follow recruiting if you can't handle the heat in the kitchen on these type of recruitments. I mean, like, this is what you want if you're Tennessee. Otherwise, you're recruiting the wrong kind of kid. Like, you want those teams that you're competing against to have to fend them off for a kid, because that means, look at Arion Carter. What did Tennessee have to do to get Arion Carter fending off Alabama? 2 years later, aren't you glad they fended him off? Or would you rather had like a guy that was much easier and you beat Louisville for him? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that these type wins and even like escapes to hold on to kids are good things, because you're, again, beating out teams that they're afraid to let that kid come to your school because they don't want you to get any momentum. And that's kind of where I think some of this stuff is for Tennessee. By the way, maybe one day I'll get invited to be over there on Matt's recruiting podcast. He's always, he always wants to do it all by himself.
Here's another question too. And I know we're talking generalities. We'll get back to some specifics here, but I wonder, because of what you're talking about, AP, and the arena that you're in, and you're having to fight people off, that it's not just about, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to go so far NIL wise over somebody to get a kid. If we're getting a little more old school recruitment, if relationships are starting to become a more prevalent, or not like back it originally was, but the relationship factor in there is carrying more weight than maybe it carried when NIL first came out.
Yeah, I think that for some kids, it just boils down to the dollar. And if whoever gives you 50 cents more, that's where the kid's going to go. But for most, they all know they're going to get paid in some form or fashion. As long as you don't disrespect them, they're going to be good. And then it comes back, again, to quote the great Top Gun Maverick, comes back to the pilot in the box. It comes back to the recruiter. It comes back to the coach and the relationships and the old school stuff that you and I have dealt with for years and years and years. And so, like, again, most of it is going to be apples to apples money wise, give or take, a few $1,000s. then it comes back down to comfort level, relationship with the coaches, relationship with mom and dad, grandma, whoever the champion is in the kids' recruitment, whether that's the high school coach, the 7-on-7 coach, the mom, the aunt, the uncle, whoever, the dad, the grandma, the grandpa. We can just keep naming them.
So you're saying it's not always about
It's
Jerry
not
Maguire
always
showing the
about money. Yeah, I would tell you most of the time it's not. Now, again, every kid is going to have more than likely have representation. Every kid is going to have that representation pushing for the best possible deal that they can get. But when it comes back down to it, it's still like, well, I mean, I know they're offering me $50,000 more to go over there, but I just don't want to go over there. Like, I really like this place because of Coach X, Y, and Z and the relationships I have with these people. And most of the time, you're going to see them do that, especially if you're winning. I mean, there's a reason Georgia and Alabama, can still kind of. I mean, they're absolutely paying kids, right? Because it's legal. It's what you do in NIL. But does Georgia get a few hometown discounts because they've been winning the last 4 or 5 years? Absolutely, they do.
Yeah,
and winning helps that stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, Pete, let's look at 2026. A couple of these guys you guys have already caught up with, but who were on campus here either last weekend or recently. On3's number one cornerback, 5-star and Albert Hill and Rodney Colton Jr. and some of these other guys. Who were some of those names, and how is Tennessee performing with those guys who have been on campus recently for 2026?
Yeah, Matt caught up with Albert Hill. We'll have a story, coming out. It may have already come out by the time this runs.
It's out.
And then, and then you got Zalis Hicks, safety out of the state of Texas. He could reclassify to 2025, and that'll be interesting to see what he decides to do over the next few weeks. We'll see if he reclassifies or not. If he doesn't, then you'll settle in for a long sled. If he does, then all of a sudden it's going to be speeding up the process. Where does Tennessee stand in that? I feel like Tennessee's in a fairly good spot, but again, long way to go with Zalis Hicks. TK Keys, I mean, you're talking about a kid a wide receiver out of the state of Mississippi that is really close with Faison Brandon, has now been here 2 times over the last month, and Tennessee continues to be in a really good spot there. He has told Matt, decision-wise, December, January, maybe February at the latest. So you're rubber's meeting the road for his recruitment fairly soon. You just obviously got a big commitment from Tyreek King last week, and so Tennessee's off to a really solid start in 2026, and they just got to continue to build on it. And of course, you mentioned Rodney Colton, the South Carolina commit linebacker that William Inge has done a really nice job with.
Hey, where is Tennessee? What do you think Tennessee got done with Savion Hitter, the running back that has been talked about coming in for a while and had not been able to get here, but he finally gets here for a visit? AP, where's Tennessee early on in that process? Because I know Michigan, Ohio State, all the big boys are in that one early as well.
Yeah, he knows that he's a priority number one for Tennessee. And so he's excited about, things at Tennessee. Had a really nice time at Michigan the week before for Michigan State. I would tell you, though, that the atmosphere here was more impressive to him and his family than what Michigan was. And so I think the night game was a big deal to him. I think the dark mode was a big deal to him. And his relationship with Darrell Sims and Josh Heupel are probably 2 of his best relationships he has. So he knows where he stands with Tennessee, and Tennessee's right up there near the top for him.
Let's revisit that commit that Tennessee got on Thursday or Friday from local standout Tyreek King. You and I are familiar with this game because he's right here. We've seen him play a couple of times. Feels like this one was this was Kelsey Pope's guy, right? Am I wrong for saying that?
Well, it's the one that Kelsey targeted, a couple of years ago, and he went hard on him. And Tyreek, he took visits. He was at A&M the week before he committed to Tennessee, but I think Tennessee's always been the team to beat for him. And they've done a fantastic job of working that relationship, and getting that one done now, I think, was big, just because you already have Faison in the boat. Again, you've got a couple of nice pieces to start this class, like a Brandon Anderson. So I think offensively, to get one of your top targets, if not your top target, at wide receiver this early in the game is big.
Any other names in 2026 that Tennessee's made some serious headway with the last week or so?
Yeah, I think if you're Tennessee, you want to get Craig Tutt back up here. Tennessee will not have visitors at this week's game. Tennessee has to give away an SEC game in each season. Mississippi State is that game. Otherwise, it'd be Vanderbilt, like they have, the last couple of times Vanderbilt's rolled into town. So they will not have any visitors, no recruits at this week's game because of the penalties from the Jeremy Pruitt deal. And so, but Craig Tutt, they love to get him back up here for UTEP. Kids, got all kinds of potential. Plays there at Oakland with DeJuan Morris. And so that's one I think Tennessee wants to continue to work on. But, this 2026 class is off to a really good start. And they want to continue to build on it with guys like Leo Delaney and other key players across the board.
Austin, I mean, obviously you got to pick your time. I mean, it makes sense to pick the Mississippi State game as a game that you don't have any in for because of what you've been able to do the last 3 weeks at home with Florida, Alabama, Kentucky. I mean, Tennessee, to me, feels like they took really good advantage of that October slate of night games and that 3:30 game against Alabama. I mean, they made hay. They made the most out of those 3 weeks. Fair?
No, that's totally fair. And they had to, Brent. I mean, they were behind the 8 ball because of this weird schedule. They didn't have any quality home games early. I mean, you have a quality home game until October 12th, but then you go checkerboard, checker kneeling, orange out, smoking cigars after the win, and then dark mode, Yeah. And so like that's a great 3-week stretch with a bye week, kind of penciled in there too. But I mean, a great 3 straight home games to get a lot of prospects in town for. And again, they'll try to get, Kendra Harrison in for the UTEP game. They were hoping to get him in this past weekend, but he had already set up a visit once he had to cancel because of a death in his family.
For the Alabama game, right?
For the Alabama game, then they tried to get him in for Kentucky, but he already had a visit to Miami on the books, and so he wasn't going to cancel on them. So he went down there. They hope to get him up here for the UTEP game.
So glad you kind of brought up the orange out and the dark mode and all that checker, because I thought from a operation standpoint, from a game day ops and all that, I mean, the games were good. Tennessee won, rivalry wins and all that, but they were exciting games. The atmosphere was incredible. And just, I mean, it was a show the other night before the game started. I mean, with the band and the lights, and I mean, that has got to be so freaking cool for the 16, 17, 18-year-olds that are here in house. I mean, that leaves an impression. Not only that, but obviously the football game as well.
Yeah, and the word is they're working on a drone show. They'll fly over the river and spell out Hubbard.
No, there's no drone shows allowed on that deal, so don't get that one started. But no, I mean, I do think you have to give a credit to game operations and the creativity. I mean, think about what Tennessee got out of last week. Let's take the win out of the equation.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's what you're supposed to get. But look how much national buzz they got from their creative side of things for the whole unveiling of dark mode on Monday.
Yeah.
I mean, they got 3 days. They got 2 or 3 days of just people talking about retweeting. And they had millions of impressions on that video they put out, which was really well done. And then you couple that with your relationships, get a bunch of good players on campus, and then you give them a good show. I mean, you give them the light show, you give them the theatrics and everything to go with it. So that was a great way to close out their 3-game recruiting streak, if you will, or run that Tennessee needed to do because of the show that they put on, in addition to going out and winning a football game. AP, I got one other thing here too for you on recruiting. As we move into November here, when does the transfer portal chatter really get going? I mean, and I asked that for this reason. In previous years, you got 4 teams in the playoff, and everybody knew who 3 of the 4 was by this point, pretty much, right?
Yep.
So now you got everybody else is kind of out. November didn't really matter to them. They were going to some bowl game somewhere, but it wasn't to go play for a trophy, so to speak, or a championship. Does the portal talk slow in any way in November because so many teams are still relevant in the hunt? Or does the portal talk just become that much more of a distraction because guys who are on teams in the hunt are really looking around and you start to get a lot of wind of guys going into the portal? How do you think that is managed and plays out in November? Because to me, it feels like it could be different than it's been the last couple of Novembers.
I mean, I think it'll be somewhat different, but at the same time, I think there's going to be so much chatter behind the scenes about potentially X, Y, and Z going out there and going in the portal, that I think schools will start to do their due diligence. Because I mean, you start hearing about this guy and that guy, and so then you just start watching. You get on. They all have that access to that video thing. They all sit there and pull up, every snap a kid plays. So I mean, like they're able to start. Okay, let's start evaluating in case this happens, and go from there. And yeah, I mean, I do think it has the possibilities to be different in some form.
I was just curious, like, is it going to be? I don't think it's going to be less kids go in, but is it going to happen? Is the rush going to happen later?
I think the rush could happen later. I do think that. I mean,
let's talk about guys going in the next couple of weeks from those teams that are still in hunt. Now, teams that are lower level teams and all those types of things, that's a different deal. I'm just curious if you think that it changes with some of the Power 4 teams, that those teams are still legitimately in the potential playoff race.
Yeah, I think the ones that are at least in the conversation, it will slow some things down. But for others, it'll still be the same. To me, the same mode as last year.
Got you. I was just curious. I think that's that thing's always evolving. So what that looks like is, and of course, the rules change all the time too, right?
That's
spring
right.
Window. No, we're not going to do a spring window. Wait. Yeah, we are going to do a spring window. No, yeah. Okay, yeah, I think we're going to.
And don't forget that window shrunk a little bit this year, right? I mean, it went from 45 to 30 days. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it went from not being able to leave after spring practice to now you got a window where you can leave, which, again, for coaches changes how you manage your roster through spring ball, what that looks like in the wintertime, and all those things. And, again, that could change. You never know when rules change because it's kind of wild right now with all that takes place. So going to be interesting to see what it looks like with this current class, what the portal looks like. But, again, Austin, I'm just Tennessee's done a nice job of getting guys on campus. They had a good summer of getting guys on campus, and they certainly had a good month of October. They get this class of 26 off to a good start.
That's right.
20-day window in the winter, and then the 10-day window there in the spring. So it starts December 9th.
But that's plenty enough. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, how many kids are going in on the 19th day? Or the 20th
Only
day?
the ones that are trying to strong arm their current situation.
There you go. Exactly.
A lot going on right now over at Volquest.com. Of course, continuing to discuss Tennessee's win over Kentucky, looking ahead at Tennessee's game against Mississippi State, recruiting as we just painted out here for the last 20 minutes or so, all that and more. Brent, if you're just listening to the podcast, you're missing out on a huge piece of the pie over on the General's Quarters at Volquest.com.
Yeah, I mean, if you're fanatical about following it, then listen, we enjoy doing the podcast and they're fun, but you're missing out on a ton of information, a ton of news, a ton of interaction with us throughout the week beyond just these two podcasts. So I encourage you to be a part. We got a lot going on right now. Baseball recruiting's been on a heater. You got basketball cranked up. We got the baseball World Series fall World Series going on. You got all kinds of things happening right now. Plus a football team that's in the middle of a playoff run, which is exactly where you wanted to be this time of year. I mean, you wanted to be relevant. You wanted to play meaningful games in November, and Tennessee's right in the middle of that, including Mississippi State coming up on Saturday.
You might have said this. Apologies if you did, but basketball season to start as well.
Yeah, it's cranked up. We got full coverage of that, and we'll see what that team and how they grow and evolve moving forward. So, again, it's crossover season with a ton of things going on right now. You want to be a part.
He is Brent Hubbs, Austin Price. I'm Eric Kane. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on a Tuesday Volquest podcast. We'll be back on Thursday, so go ahead and get those questions in. Brent will put a thread up on the board, and we will answer those on Thursday's podcast. Big thank you to Exterior Home Solutions for being our presenting sponsor of the show, 865-524-5888, online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. For Brent, Austin, Rob, I'm Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for joining us here on the Volquest podcast.